So, with that, sorry, just so you guys know, David and I like go way back, so this is all in love. I love David. David loves me, as far as I know. So, I want to ask you guys a couple questions to get this started. But there's going to be a couple parameters with it, because otherwise it's going to be chaos. So, A, if you're sitting with your friends and you're like, I'm just way too cool to answer these questions right now, I don't know, somebody smack them on the back of the head. Other thing, if you're the guy that's like, I'm going to bully everyone around me into agreeing with my answer, somebody else smack them on the back of the head. And when I like try and get your attention, help me out, because there's 80-something of you guys, and then there's one of me with not so great of a microphone. So the very first question that I want you guys to sit together, I want you to ponder, I want you to pull out Socrates if you want, I want you to pull out any literature you know, and answer this one question. Is water wet? No. With your group, get together. Some of you are going to be wrong. Some of you may be right. I want to like call people out that I see yelling for being a bully. It's not worth it though. All right. Shh. Oh, that was almost so good. Okay, without a bunch of voices, I just want hands to go up, not voices. Is water wet? Yes, put a hand up. Okay, put your hands down. Is water not wet? All right, follow-up question for you guys. Shh. Follow-up question, same thing. Pull out all your knowledge. Use every brain cell you have left. Is fire on fire? Is fire on fire? Okay, so same thing. Don't yell at me. Is fire on fire? Yes, put your hand up. I'm so glad there's only like 3 of you guys. Put your hand up if it's not, or put your hand up if it's not on fire. So for those of you intellectuals in the room that raised your hand the second time, no, water's not wet. Water makes things wet. And no, fire's not on fire. Fire makes things on fire. So what I want to get into is the very idea of questions. Questions are something that is so important, so critical in day-to-day life, in like long-term life, when it comes to salvation, when it comes to just eternity in general. Questions we ask matter and carry a lot of weight. Now there's dumb questions like, is water wet? Is fire on fire? That's a dumb question. But then there's things that matter a lot more. And something that's cool is when we even look at Jesus himself, Jesus asked a lot of questions. Just in the 4 Gospels, Jesus asked 304 individual distinct questions. He was also asked something like 184, and there's this like super pseudo-Christian lady that says he only answered 3, and he answered, I forget what the actual number is, but like 162 of them or something. Side note. So I want to read you guys a quote by Socrates. It is simple. It is, the unexamined life is not worth living. Have any of you guys heard that before? Yeah, it's a pretty popular, if you haven't heard it, I don't know. I'm not going to say it. If you haven't heard it, what do you guys think that means? Somebody give me a quick, what does it mean the unexamined life is not worth living? Somebody take a shot at it. Oh, none of you are brave enough? Oh, there we go.
Well, I mean, obviously, Socrates wasn't a Christian, so you can't really take what he says to heart. But I think the meaning of that quote probably something along the lines of, really kind of inquire about each moment, try and, find out what's actually there instead of just letting it pass you by, not, really experiencing it, more or less being a, spectator on your own life rather than actually living it.
Yeah, and for those of you guys on the far side in the nosebleed seats, it's the idea that you should be asking questions. You should be thinking and pondering things in day-to-day life, no matter what it is. You shouldn't just be living a life of something happens and you go like, oh, well, it is what it is, and move on with life, or whatever you're going to say. And I want to talk about how few people actually do this in their day-to-day life. Few people, even Christians, and like John said, so Socrates was not a Christian, so I'm not saying he's right 100% of the time. But in day-to-day life, we should be examining things and questioning things beyond just living straight through them. And for most people, that's the case of they just live through them. They just let them go by. They just let things happen. They just let things go unanswered often. I think of like the big questions of life, like what's the purpose of my life? What's the point of all this? Is there a God? Is there any point? Is there a reason for this stuff happening? And then even into more specific things, so many people, and I know this just from doing ministry and talking to people, so many people think, is there a point to my life? I don't know. I'll move on and figure it out later. Or is there a reason this is happening? I don't know. I'll move on and figure it out later. Or whatever the question may be. And for so many people, that's where they leave things. And we as Christians, for those of you guys that you are Christians in this room, we have special answers to these questions. We have answers that actually go beyond just, well, I don't know, I'll figure it out one day, or I'll die and then I'll know, or whatever the answer is that people give themselves. And we often get these almost fleeting questions asked of us. How many of you guys have ever been asked by somebody, why do you spend so much time at church? Or like, why do you go to church? Or anything along those lines. How many of you have been ever asked like, why don't you cuss? Something along those lines. Or why don't you tell those jokes? Or why don't you blah, blah, blah? Why don't you drink? Why don't you smoke? Why don't you go to those parties? Why don't you talk this certain way? Whatever it may be. You should be getting asked these type of questions. And in the Bible, 1 Peter 3:15 and 16, it says, but sanctify Christ as Lord in your hearts, always being ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account for the hope that is in you, but with gentleness and respect, and keep a good conscience, so that in the thing in which you are slandered, those who disparage you, your good behavior in Christ will be put to shame. See, you should be getting questions asked of you regularly. People should regularly be wondering why you do X, Y, and Z, or why you act in a certain way, or why you're joyful, why you're happy, whatever it may be. And there's only two answers, and we're not going to dig into these too much, but there's only two reasons that doesn't happen. And A, it's you're not a Christian, and that's a different message. You don't love the Lord, so you're not acting in that way, so you're not going to get asked these type of questions. Or B, and this one is going to be more of you in this room, you are hiding the convictions that you truly have in your life. You're hiding the Christianity, you're hiding the morals that you have, you're hiding these things, and people don't even know you're a Christian. And I want to challenge you, if you've never been asked some question about Christianity, whether it's like, hey, why do you believe in Jesus? Or do you believe in Jesus? Or why do you not cuss? Why do you go to church? Whatever it may be. If you've never been asked those things, I want to encourage you to evaluate where you're at. Go talk to your home pastor. You can talk to me afterwards. Go talk to David. Go talk to whoever you want, really, within reason. But it's so important that we evaluate this, because Christianity lives in stark contrast to everything that this world has. Especially today, especially in America, and honestly just anywhere in the world, you can't live a Christian life without it being noticed. You can't live with Christian morals. You can't dress in a modest way. You can't speak in modest ways. You can't be joyful without people noticing, because it is so starkly different than everything else that we have. And among that, it's also offensive to what this world offers. The gospel is offensive and flies in the face of everything that our world, our culture, and society, media, you fill in the blank with what you want, pushes on everything. And like I mentioned earlier, there's so many people that ask questions, don't have an answer, and just move on with life. And for so many of us, when we get asked these questions, and 95% of the time when you get asked, hey, why do you go to church so much? Hey, why do you not cuss, or whatever it is? It's not actually the root issue that's going on in that person's heart. For most of the time, it's this shallow thing that they notice, they haven't thought about, they haven't pondered, they haven't gone for years wondering, why does David actually go to church 5 days a week, or whatever it actually is? Why does he do that? They're not sitting at home thinking of these things. But often what happens is people notice something and then ask a quick question about it. And so what I want to talk about is, how do we respond to those questions? And this is going to overlap even into harder questions of like, why does the Bible care about abortion? Why do Christians tend to vote this way? Why do Christians tend to, I don't know what, fill in with what you want. And so I want to look back at 1 Peter, that's a different verse. It says, but sanctify Christ as Lord in your hearts, always being ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account. The very first thing that we see come up in this verse about how we can answer these questions is simply preparing. Simply taking time to go out of your way to actually get knowledge, to actually learn these things, to actually study, to do research, whatever it may be. In 2 Timothy 3:16, it says, all scripture is breathed out by God and profitable for teaching, for reproof, for correction, and for training in righteousness, that the man of God may be competent and equipped for every good work. The Bible is clearly stating that we need the word in our life. And far too many people are not daily getting into the word. And I'll even give you 5 out of 7 days a week, or give or take a day. If you're not daily getting into the word, you're not going to be able to answer so many of these questions that come up. You're not going to have a solid relationship with the Lord. You're going to have issues. You're not going to be able to answer questions that come up in your own heart. You're not going to know how to act. You're not going to, there's going to be this snowball effect of things that happen. And there's so many people that open their Bible app at 8 a.m. every day and they go, oh, the verse of the day, I'm going to read that. And that's going to be my devotions for the week or the day or whatever you want to say. And I want to challenge you guys, if you're that person, and I know there's some of you in this room, if that's your devotions, if that's your extent of study or extent of getting into the word, you're going to stumble and struggle so much when it comes to answering these questions. And we're going to get into it a little bit more. And this happens because the majority of questions people ask about Christianity is because they have twisted scripture, somebody else has twisted or cut out or taken a verse out of context and told them, why Brooke just got a question at her Sunshine Club, like, why did the Bible burn all the gay people or something like that? And it's like, well, you're not going to find that in there. And not knowing that that's not in the Bible doesn't help. And I really want to encourage you guys, get into the word daily. Get into the word personally, you yourself, not just a verse of the day, not just once a week, not just once a month, not just Tuesday nights when we open it. Get into the word yourself so you can prepare for these things. And like I mentioned, there's lots of resources out there to research individual topics. There's lots of things like Blue Letter Bible is great. If you don't know what a verse is talking about or a chapter or whatever it is in the Bible, that's a great resource. It's just, is it still blb.com? That's what it used to be. Yeah. BLB, Blue Letter Bible. Type that in, nothing else is going to come up. Click on that and you can get a bunch of research in that. I want to encourage you that if you want to be at a place where you're prepared to answer whether it's easy questions or tough questions people are going to ask, and actually advance the kingdom, and actually be prepared to speak to people in this way, getting into the word is the very foundation of all of this. And the very next thing that this says is right after it says, always being ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account for the hope that is in you. This is another stumbling block or common pitfall that people get into when they answer these questions. So many people want to dig into the weeds. They want to dig into the facts, dig into the statistics. That's my go-to. But the truth is, we have a hope inside of us that we are called to share. When somebody asks, why did the Bible burn all the gay people? We shouldn't be like, well, actually, blah, 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 blah. We should be like, well, God is very loving. Yeah, he didn't do that. Actually not what happened. But we should present love. We should present hope in all of these answers. We shouldn't be like, well, let's look at statistics and look at why you're just completely wrong and let me prove that you're an idiot. No, it's Jesus is good. Jesus is powerful. Jesus has hope and has an offering in your life that goes far beyond whatever this question may be. And I want to challenge you guys that that is the gospel. That is ultimately what we're sharing, is the hope of Jesus Christ. Because we don't need to be the aggressors in the situation. We don't need to just bully people through philosophy into the ground. The very next one, which ties right into this, is it mentions that we do this with gentleness and with respect. And this ties very directly into to the hope that we have, but we also need to present these things with gentleness and with respect. And there was this really cool story at the men's conference. How many of you guys went to men's conference? I can't remember if it was the main stage or if it was during a breakout session I was at. More of you men in this room, go to the conference next year. But there was this, it was on a panel. So yeah, so they were talking about how Mike Van Meter went with this other pastor. I can't remember his name right now. I can't remember the name of his church. Whatever. They went to a mosque, a Muslim mosque, to talk to people about Jesus. To talk to them about why they need Jesus, why Jesus is different, why Muslim or Islamic ways don't work in most ways, and all these things. And the cool thing is this pastor talked about how he puts on the entire tunic. Is that what they call it? whatever the robe is that they wear. He goes up to like the washing and cleanses himself before he goes in. He washes his feet. He wears the they're special like sandal things. They're not called sandals, but they're sandals. And he does all these things because he's not trying to walk in and offend people. He's not trying to walk in and be the big old Christian that's going to bully people and say like, I'm so much better than you. I don't need all this stuff. But what he is doing is he's trying to get into something these people are doing so that he can share the gospel. Now the thing with this is don't sin when you do these things. You know, wearing a different outfit, washing your hands, wearing shoes or whatever it is, that's not sin. Don't go out partying at raves because you want to reach those people for Jesus. That's not what I'm saying at all. But when it comes to different things, you know, if you go to somebody's house and they have a weird, you know, clap 3 times before you walk through the door, clap 3 times before you walk through the door. That is so dumb, of course, but whatever it is, if somebody wants you to take their shoes off, or if you're talking to somebody and they're wearing a mask and you're not wearing a mask and they won't talk to you because you're not wearing one, put a mask on. David talked about this, I think at a Higher Ground thing. Higher Grounds, we had to wear masks, and he talked about how he didn't want to, but at the end of the day, Jesus is so much more important than my comfort of not having a mask over my face. And the same is true with so many other things. There's so many things that I think we can get stuck in of, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be a part of that. I'm too good. I'm too cool. I'm too whatever it is. But the truth is we need to be respectful towards people so that we can answer these questions. If you're going to be rude, if you're going to be mean, if you're not going to be just respectful in general, you're not going to have people that are willing to open up and actually hear what you have to say or even ask you questions in the first place. And the very last thing that this verse says, it says, and keep a good conscience so that in the thing in which you are slandered, those who disparage you, your good behavior in Christ, will be put to shame. The very last thing that I want to cover when it comes to how we answer these questions and what we do is the idea that we need to walk the walk. We need to practice what we preach when we're talking about these things. If you want to go talk to somebody about them struggling with making meth in their basement, that's my go-to because I don't want to call anything out. Making meth in their basement, and you're Heisenberging it up in your basement, you cannot preach to them about that they need to stop doing that. And the same is true with cussing. The same is true with dressing poorly. The same is true with addictions in general. The same is true with tithing. The same is true with church attendance, whatever it may be. You cannot preach these things if you are not yourself walking these out. And I think about like even in just attitudes that we have. I mentioned how we're offering hope, we're offering joy, we're offering peace. And so many people and Christians I know don't walk out just the hope and joy that Jesus has. So many Christians are so stressed and overwhelmed, and I'm so busy, I have so much going on. I don't have time for that. I can't meet up. I can't answer your call. I can't answer your text message. I'm too busy. Or you're just stressed and overwhelmed in that. Or when somebody's asking you, hey, how's your day been, or your week, or your month, or however long it's been, and your answer is, oh, it was just so hectic and so crazy. And the next week they ask, oh, it's just so hectic, it's so crazy. And the next week, oh, it's just so hectic, it's so crazy. Oh, it's just so hectic, it's so crazy. That's not the gospel. And some of you guys might be thinking like, oh, yep, I do that a lot. Every week, worst week of my life. Every day, something went wrong. My life's ending. They didn't like my post, so clearly we're not friends anymore. But the truth is, all of us are called to live in this joy, live in this not necessarily stress-free, not necessarily work-free, not necessarily non-overwhelming at times. There's going to be weeks, there's going to be times that you are actually busy, but I'm telling you right now, it's not every week, it's not every day. And I want to challenge you guys, if you're not living a life that's giving an example of what we're trying to offer, of what we're trying to give, you should evaluate that. You should seek counsel in those things. You should be going out of your way to present and represent Jesus in the way that he's called us to. Because we are the display and to display peace and joy. We are the ones that are offering this goodness, and we need to show that it is truly goodness. And so we are to answer questions in this way. We're to answer questions with hope, with gentleness, with respect. We're supposed to know answers to these things. We shouldn't just be making it up on the fly. You are not allowed to lie to somebody so you can look good. And for us, It's so important that we are willing to get deeper into the root issues of what people are asking. When somebody asks me, why do you go to church so much? Realistically, they haven't thought about that much. But when we are digging into it, I'm not going to give a lot of answers because we're going to get back to this topic. When we get deeper into it, we're going to bring up things that they're going to have more questions on. We're going to bring up things that it's like, what are you talking about, God says? I've never heard that in my life. Or what Bible doesn't say that at all. Or, oh, that's not what Christians believe. Or it's going to be they're just not mind blown, but they're just surprised by answers and they're going to want to know more. And so when you get asked, why don't you cuss? The answer shouldn't just be, well, Jesus said so. That led nowhere. That answers nothing for them. It should be, well, Jesus calls us to this higher standard of living that is meant to be separated from this world. It's meant to be something that's set apart and special and unique to glorify him. Now, most people, when you answer like that, are going to be like, whoa, dude, hold on. Like, take it back a step. Let's dig into this. And you should be also leaving off with questions as well. I mentioned earlier that Jesus asked 304, or was asked 304. He asked like 180 something. I just flipped those. He asked 304. He was asked 180. And it's so important that we are also asking questions. It's the way that we process things. It's the way that humans get through and dig deeper into just general issues. And so what I want to do right now is I want to challenge you guys to put these things into practice. So what you're going to do is with your table, I want you to pretend like I'm the random coworker, the random schoolmate, classmate, not schoolmate, the random person you run into the street or whatever it may be. And I want you guys to answer that question, why are you at church so much? What do you answer to that question? What do you say? Do you just say, well, it's fun? That's useless. That doesn't do anybody good. And I want you guys to challenge each other and come up with a response to that. With the people at your table, talk about why you truly are at church so much, but also how should you represent that and how should you communicate that to other people with these things in mind. So, with your tables, why are you at church so much? Wait for it. All right. Yeah, all of those things are great. All of those things are much better answers than, well, honor the Sabbath, right? Right? Those are so much better. And my go-to is similar to how Sammy's was God called us into community. He calls us to be with like-minded people that are going to push us towards Jesus. They're going to push us towards things that we desire, towards things that we want to reach, our goals, all these things. We're called to be with people that encourage that. And then my only thing is I would follow up with, are you part of anything like that? Do you have a group you go to? Do you have a church? Have you ever been to a church? Because what that does is it lays up a conversation versus, let me just give you a cookie cutter answer to this. Let me just move on with life. Let me just blow you off because I'm so busy and I need to move on to, I don't know, hanging out with friends or whatever you're doing. And it's so important that we do that. And I'm not saying this is the answer that you have to give every single time. But I do want to say that following up with something that leads to deeper discussion is so important when it comes to any of these topics, any question that you get asked. So I want to do one more thing. Same thing, just new question. I want you guys to answer the question, why do Christians, why does the Bible condemn homosexuality when it's clear God made gays and that he loves all people the same? Answer that question at your tables, and I'm going to ask 4 answers. So I want to give props. Declan stole basically my answer. So props to Declan. He helped me move a couch today too, so double props. I want to, yeah, you can give him a round of applause. Declan gets one too. You guys are so lame. Anyways, it's just too late. We're moving on. You guys failed me. So I want to challenge you guys. A couple of your guys' answers forgot a couple of my rules for answering these questions. Now it's so easy, and I chose this question very specifically, very intentionally, because it's so easy in this to just go, God doesn't say that. The Bible doesn't say that. God didn't create these people. God, they're going to hell. It's an abomination of blah, 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 blah. It's so easy in this especially to get stuck in that kind of view. What's much harder when it comes to this subject, when it comes to abortion, when it comes to smoking weed, when it comes to vaping, when it comes to money and finances, it's much harder to offer the hope that God has in all of these things. Because God isn't just telling people, don't be gay. God is offering something that goes far beyond that, and what he's offering is marriage. God has set up and created marriage in a way that it's going to represent him. It's going to represent his church. It's going to produce children that is then going to lead to showing his goodness through generations and his goodness through the father, son, father, daughter, daughter, mother, father, son, mother. I should have wrote that out and just read it. Whatever, you guys know what I mean. It's going to represent that kind of relationship that God has, and it's going to produce so much fruit. It's going to produce so much goodness and joy in life. And any time that we turn from that, any time that we twist that, any time that we remove part of that or add to it, it's going to be something that doesn't work out. And I want to challenge you guys, answers like that, and I'm not saying that's the correct answer either, answers like that offer something beyond just, you're a sinner, get out of my face. You're twisting the Bible, go read it, or whatever the answer is going to be. And it's so important for us in these things to offer that hope. And it's also important that, like I talked about with gentleness and respect, not to say you're going to hell because you're a sinner, or you're, I don't know, going to get struck by a lightning bolt, or whatever it's going to be that you're going to come up with and not be corrected. And it's so, so critical that we give hope, we give love, we give joy in these things, and a lot of that's going to come from preparing. A lot of you guys in this room probably haven't actually taken time to prepare to answer that type of question. A lot of you, it's probably been a lot more of, you've heard snippets here and there, and you know that like kind of marriage is there, and God created Adam and Eve, not Steve, and you're just going to go from there. And for you guys, I want to challenge you, look up these things. Research what God says about abortion. Research what he says about homosexuality. Research what he says about life and every aspect. I don't want to name a million. And for you guys, I've said this a couple times, we don't have to be perfect in these things either, which is great. There's this natural thing where we as humans, when we get asked a question, we want to be the expert that knows the perfect answer and is just going to blow their mind with wisdom. And I tell people all the time, I don't know. Let me get back to you. Or let me pull out my phone. Do you have a minute? And I'll look it up and we'll figure this out together. And that's something that we need to do as Christians. Because so many people find Christians as hypocrites. They find them as liars and deceivers. And it's because we have that tendency to just come up with an answer so we look good and we look cool and we look like we know everything. And I really want to challenge you. It's okay not to have a perfect answer. It's okay to go, well, I know God created marriage and that's really good and beautiful, but I just think that twists it. I just think that's not as good when we don't have a man and a woman come together. And that's a perfectly fine answer. And you should prepare, you should try and perfect that and get better and better at answering these questions. But you don't need to just make something up on the fly that's not going to be good. It's better to just not answer. It's better to just say, I actually don't know. Let me call someone. Let me take your phone number and I'll shoot you a text, or I'll send you a link when I find something that makes sense and answers this. And I really want to encourage you guys that in any of these areas, it takes work. It takes a lot of work to move from not being prepared, not being able to answer well, not being able to give hope to these questions that are tough. And it's so important that we as Christians are representing Christ in a way that's going to allow for these questions to dig deeper, go down to root issues, and actually get people saved and understand there's a God that loves them. And so what I want to do is we're going to go over to worship. How long are we going to worship for? 25 minutes, half hour. So when we go over there, I want to ask you guys, if there's something in this that you're struggling with, if there's something that you're recognizing, I suck at that, I suck at being loving in this, and I just want to be like myself, I struggle with this, just a jerk and just answer and overpower with statistics and facts and whatever. We're going to be up by the projectors. Will that work, David? Well, all us leaders, home pastors, prayer team, whatever we're called. What are we called? Ministry team. Up by the projectors, and we want to pray for you. Whether it's something completely off topic, maybe it's something that the Lord just brought up, but as we go over there, if there's something you want prayer for, go over under the projectors, and we'll be there waiting for you guys to pray for you. So I believe I'm dismissing you, so head on in to the youth auditorium.